Purple Day. You're wondering, what is that? So, Purple Day is an international grassroots effort dedicated to increasing awareness about epilepsy worldwide, and it is celebrated on this day annually. And people in different countries around the world are invited to wear purple and host events in support of epilepsy awareness. And I thought my three guests watakuwa wamevaa purple, lakini naona kidogo nilidhani hata wangeniletea, let's say even the whole pockets kunivaa pia mi purple.
I know.
Anyway, I'll let them introduce themselves and tell us who they are and why they really are here. Right. I'll start with you.
My name is Frederick Beuchi. I'm an epilepsy awareness activist, but I'm also a caregiver, taking care of a sister who was diagnosed with epilepsy when she was 2 years old. And I've been taking care of her for the last 16 years.
16, wow.
Yes, and now she has been seizure-free for about 6 years.
Were you an activist before now or now after?
After we discovered that my sister had epilepsy. That was when she was about 2 years old.
So you've been an activist about 16 years as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Raising awareness about epilepsy.
All right.
Yes.
Right. And to Asha, Ramadan Karim to you, by the way.
Thank you. Okay, I'm Asha Abdallah. I'm a neurophysiologist. That's Ubuntu Neurology. So we deal with, we encounter patients with epilepsy, okay, throughout, like, it's our almost daily. So we receive patients, give them treatments, and there are need of tests that need to be done for maybe the doctors to know what to go or how to go about it.
All right, fantastic.
So
how many years?
And guide them.
Okay, how many years?
10 years.
10 years.
Yes.
All right. And you, sir?
My name's Fred Kerr from Kiserem Epilepsy. I'm also a person living with epilepsy since 2011.
Since 2011?
Yes.
How many years are those until now?
I think 10 or 11.
More maths. 10, about 10? No.
About 10 years. Yeah.
15 years, give or take, about 15 years. Right. So I was asking the years so that even the viewer can really understand the three of you are talking off and from experience.
Yeah.
And I think I'll now start with you so that you can really enlighten us on someone has had that word, epilepsy. They don't really understand. Or rather, they've actually seen someone with seizures and all that, but they don't really understand what this is. Could you enlighten us?
Okay, first I'll start with seizures. It's an involuntary body movements which are usually caused by the abnormal electrical activity of the brain. Usually, as human beings, we usually have electrical currents in our brains, which it's supposed to be usually in a standard. When it's the electrical activity kind of shoots off, that's when now the patient gets the convulsions, which we call seizures. And now epilepsy is now when you got frequent seizures. Like now the seizures appears in multiple times. Yes.
So at what age now does it come on?
Okay, it happens from birth. Someone can get seizure from birth, from early age to now adulthood.
So it doesn't really depend on...
It doesn't have a specific age.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
So what, is that because, and I think that's always the biggest kind of question that you get, the cause.
Yes.
And even you take a look at even the whole page of World Purple Day, and they say the cause isn't really known.
Yeah.
So from your end, I think I'll really have to throw you under the bus for this. What's the cause of epilepsy, or rather, what does studies show? Probably when you're doing different studies, even around, let's say even in Kenya, what are some of those kind of causes that you probably might predict and say, so this can be the cause, so this can be the cause, uniquely in Kenya? Okay.
I can start maybe with newborns. Maybe sometimes contractions during birth can cause a seizure. Maybe the mom maybe had a prolonged labor So during contractions, maybe the head kind of being pressed or being mishandled during birth can cause epilepsy. Maybe in a toddler, when someone falls down, head trauma can cause a seizure. When the patient hits the head, it can cause a seizure. Sometimes you look at maybe in the family history, there's someone who has epilepsy in the family or seizures.
So it could be genetic as well?
Yeah, it could be genetic.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there specific, because, and I think that could be really one of the biggest questions that now people might be asking. And remember, back at home, you can always engage with us on our socials. You can always call in live. I do have the sharpest of minds here, 0795 0458 for engage with us. Now, before I engage the gentleman, is there a part of the head, because when you say umegonga kichwa, sometimes you do things around the house, or you know, maybe at work, and umepata umejigongesha tu kichwa bahati mbaya. Is there a specific part of the head that could probably be a determinant?
Not really. It's the whole brain. It depends. Maybe if you're hit on the maybe occipital side, we call right, like behind the head. There are different types of seizures, and they present themselves in different ways. So it usually depends on which side is affected. If you get maybe on the left side, you might find the person maybe when getting the seizure, it affects the right side. If it affects like most part of the brain, you'll get now that patient having we call it like general tonic-clonic seizures. Now the ones that affect the whole body. Yes.
So now back in 2011.
Yes.
How was, and I'm curious, at what age, because to be really from birth all the way, it doesn't really determine the kind of age you were there. So itabidi tutacalculate tujue ulikuwa na miaka ngapi hiyo time. But then how old were you at that time, and how did it present for you? What do you think, and maybe what did the doctors tell you this might have been the cause?
Okay. So me in 2011, I was working in Iraq as a pastry chef.
In Iraq?
Yes,
Okay.
as a pastry chef. So I was working in the night shift. So while coming back to sleep, I started having seizures, nocturnal seizures, but they were also tonic-clonic. So a friend of mine from Uganda is the one who saw how I was reacting. Then he told me this is epilepsy. So, but you know, I was in my sleep, so I never knew like what really happened. So it came again the second time. Luckily, I was coming home after a month, because we used to come home after 6 months. So when I came home, I did an EEG and an MRI. Is when they found out that I had a small benign tumor on this side of the brain. It is the one that had caused my epilepsy. Yes.
How was now the journey? Because you've come back home, so you come ulienda hosina some of your loved ones. How was it just being told? Because you had a friend of yours, the Ugandan friend, that mentioned this might be. But then now this is a doci confirming, by the way, this is epilepsy. How's the realization of this coming from a medical professional?
By the way, the biggest problem people with epilepsy have is the acceptance. Because even me, it took me more than 3 years to accept that that I have epilepsy. So I continued to work for another 4 years, but I used to carry drugs for like 7 months, so that in case someone doesn't come for vacation, my drugs are safe. But now the problem was the acceptance that I am not well, that I am because I was thinking, who could have bewitched me? At this time of my career, I'm earning a good money. Then is the time now I'm working well, and then I'm starting to get sick. So it took almost 3 years, to be honest, for me now to accept that I am not well. Yes. Right.
And because you have two Freddies here, I'll say Freddy A. So Freddy, and you know, so you come and now your sister, Makupatia permission, you talk on behalf of her, partly. For her, because you say, you know, it's 2 years old.
Yes.
The matters self-acceptance now play a different part here, because this is a 2-year-old. They don't really understand what's going on. Could you enlighten us? What could have been the cause at this age?
Well, for my sister, when she was born, like 2 weeks later, she experienced malaria. and then it developed to being cerebral malaria. So we treated, cerebral malaria because it's treatable, but it had already affected the brain. So 2 years later is when we started now seeing, these symptoms of her getting some twitches and experiencing those different kind of seizures. And to be honest, as a family, we had not really experienced anyone within our family having such.
Did you understand when the doctor is there? Anamwakalisha mwambia, sasa, hii kitu tumeona,
this is. To be honest, one of the reasons why even today we are raising awareness about epilepsy, it's because there wasn't so much information about epilepsy. That is number one. And number two, epilepsy in itself as a condition. Personally, I think the closest I had gotten to knowing about epilepsy was from watching this movie of Jesus and healing a person, this young man with epilepsy. That's how close I had come to knowing about epilepsy. Otherwise, all other stories within the village and
the face-to-face.
They were more of very negative. A lot of myths and misconceptions around this condition. Within our village, I only knew of one person, and he was known by everybody to be having this kind of condition. So for us to even think that this condition has treatment took us a long time. Yes, we were determined to see that our sister gets help, because over time, the condition was getting worse. My sister was getting seizures now after every 20 minutes. And she would fall and she would jerk. Sometimes she would bite her tongue, have some kind of foam coming out. So you can imagine someone who gets that kind of a seizure after every 20 minutes. Once she's woken up, there is nothing that you can do. And that's why at some point in my life, around 2012, I had to quit my job to go back home and help my mom take care of my sister. And during that process is when one time I saw an interview and doctors were talking about this condition. And for the first time, there was going to be an epilepsy open day in Nairobi. I come from Mombasa, so I had to travel all the way to just come and see if I can see a doctor who I could explain the case and see if they could treat my sister. And I was lucky to get one of the epileptologists in the country. And he was very compassionate about me coming all the way. And when I explained the case, he came to Mombasa, did the tests again. He was able to determine what type of epilepsy it was, and she was put under medication. And 6 months later, we really started seeing a lot of change and progress. So now we are talking of her being about 16, 17 years, and she has been seizure-free for about 6 years, which is a big improvement from someone who was getting seizures after every 20 minutes. So as a family, I would say it wasn't easy, and also getting to that journey of treatment also took us a lot of time.
It took time.
Sure.
Now for both cases, you have a 2-year-old and you have, though Fredi alikataa kutuambia miaka yake ikiwa Iraq, but then, I mean, you have an adult at this age. When you take a look at for both of them, and even how the treatment and the whole process is, how is it, will you say, for a child and for a 2-year-old, or just after birth, the whole treatment process might be, is it easier than even for an adult? Because first of all, this adult is grappling with the whole self-acceptance. And again, matters, people around you, do they understand you? Is it easier for a child?
Yeah, it's usually easier for a child than the adult. Because as a child, now the child is under the care of the parent. But now it also usually depends on the surrounding that you're in. Because not everyone will understand this is a medical condition. So that's why usually nowadays we try to make awareness for people to understand that such a kind of a situation, whenever it happens, it's not witchcraft, or they should not be excluded from the society. It's just to educate them to know how to deal with such a situation, and also to help in whenever it happens when you're there, on how to deal with the situation. You're giving maybe the first aid and guiding.
When, and let's say you have a mother who is expectant, and she's probably the whole process of maybe prenatal care, the whole antenatal care. Are doctors really suspicious when, and they're really careful, and they're really taking a look at, right, I'm being told that, do you have a call, or, right, just to remind you, you can always remind you to call in live 0795045864. So back to the question, for this, do doctors really scan and carefully check for epilepsy, and even any cases and suspicious cases of it?
It's usually a bit difficult to detect when the baby has not been born yet, because when the parent is pregnant, most of them usually don't know if that patient has any abnormal activity in the brain. So once during delivery, if it presents itself, or sometimes it takes time before it started presenting, so it's usually a bit difficult to detect before the baby is born.
Right.
Yes.
So, Freddie,
yes.
Umerudi Kenya, umeambiwa that you have epilepsy. And I mean, generally, the whole elephant in the room in this conversation on this particular day is matters raising awareness. And one of the bottlenecks, na shida kubwa sana, we talk about even raising awareness. And if, as he was talking about, if Paliko village is stigma, for you, how is, as an adult at this point, umetoka Iraq, umerudi, what was your biggest fear? Even on matters self-acceptance, and what did you face stigma? Were you afraid of what people around you might probably be saying?
Yeah, my biggest stigma was one. My girlfriend, I had told her that I have epilepsy, so alinitoka. Yeah, because
you 2011.
Yeah, in 2011. So you have to tell her, because you might have a seizure anytime.
Yeah.
So I told her, by the way, I'm not well. So she told me that she can't go out with somebody with epilepsy. Then the other biggest problem was most of my friends also, when I told them that this was happening, they never understood either you are bewitched or you are crazy. So many people face discrimination from the community itself. Instead of the community helping them to overcome the issue, they in turn turn them away and make them feel isolated. And this isolation makes them feel to be depressed, and also to get stress. And it's very, very dangerous for them. I face a lot of that in my place. Yes.
Now for your sister.
Yeah.
Were there, how frequent were the seizures when she was still, let's say, around 2 years, around 3 years? How often are they?
Well, I mean, I just said earlier, like she would experience seizures after every 20 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So, I mean, that's the highest, frequency I've ever seen, at intervals of how a seizure would happen. And Fred is also bringing in a very, another aspect about, having me being a caregiver, having a family or people that can really be there to embrace you and help you in the journey of acceptance. We say that if a person has epilepsy, they indirectly, affect like 5 people around them.
So at this point, because you told us, so you quit your job, you said your mother to take care of the sister. Did you have any training on how to be a caregiver of someone with epilepsy?
Not really. This is where we say you kind of like land on the job, you know, and the biggest challenge was knowing how to actually like do the first aid. And
so after every 20 minutes, what will you do?
Well, you would be careful to assist her not to either fall in a place where it is very dangerous, or fall in water or on fire, or a place where she could like either hit her head or get an injury of the legs or arms. So those were the minimum we would do. But over time, of course, you know, when we started interacting with the doctor, we were able to be told what exactly to do. Because again, there is a lot of miscommunication when it comes to understanding what epilepsy first aid is all about. And perhaps that's something that we might want to share. Yes.
So Asha, tell us the frequency of some of these seizures, even for someone who's a caregiver. They probably don't even have this knowledge. Again, they're learning on the job at that time. So how frequent typically should it be? What are the do's and don'ts when these seizures come?
Seizures, it's usually not good for the person to get like frequent seizures. It's usually not good for the brain. It can damage the brain. So that's why we're being advised, if you see you have a person who has frequent seizures, it's good to rush to the hospital. You just call an emergency for it to be managed. You can't stay with that person at home because it can really damage the brain.
So now do you have to take, because again, I think that's going to be even one of the biggest questions from the caregivers at home who are watching us. Do they now have to take this person to the hospital every single time? So, or again, on matters again, first aid. So what's the first thing they do every time the seizures come?
The first thing you do, first you have to know how to manage the seizure, like first aid. So whenever it happens, you try and first of all, you have to be calm. If you panic, you don't need to panic. You just do first aid first. You wait for you clear the area where the person is. Try to avoid anything that can harm him. You just wait for the seizure to end. Don't restrain or put anything in the mouth, because sometimes it happens that people say that the person can bite their tongue and swallow. They put something inside, which is not good. That can cause more damage. Whenever you place something inside, let's say like a spoon, you can break the teeth, you can injure the jaws, which is not good. You just let the seizure, let it happen. If possible, slightly turn the patient on the side, where whenever there's something in the mouth, it will just clear the area. Wait for it to end. If it continues, that's when it's an emergency.
So
if it happens like frequently, like the way which is saying 20 minutes, maybe after an hour, now that's when you call for emergency. You just rush to the nearest facility. Now that there's a way they can manage it from there.
So for example, let's see, this young boy is playing football, and then one of them begins seizuring. So how long naturally should this person, because you're telling us now when it continues, seek medical help. But then now before, you can do the first aid. So how long should you wait for?
For it, like 5 minutes. If it takes more than 5 minutes, now that's an emergency. Because most seizures happens for seconds, or 3 minutes. But if it takes more than 5 minutes, now that's an emergency.
Is it the same for adults as well as children?
Anyone who gets a seizure.
Because I'm curious, because I'm taking a look at even how you're built, and so I'm curious, were there difficult times even for your caregiver, and even people around you? Yeah. Because watasema Freddy ni mkubwa sana, but the time to maybe tumshike mkono, to make it on the side, and all that. What was maybe some of those difficult moments, and how was it even for the relationship between you and even the caregiver?
At first, it was chaotic because my mom, the way Fred said, one person affects 5 people. So my mom was almost stressed up completely, like completely. So she was soaked up into my sickness. So one time I was working, I think I was coming from Dubai. Then I stayed in Dubai for a month. I never took drugs while in Dubai. So during that time, I was just taking alcohol. And you know, you're not supposed to take alcohol while on meds. So when I came home that night, I started having seizures.
Okay.
At around 2 o'clock in the night.
Right. Hold that thought hapo. Shikilia story kidogo tu hapo usisahau. Allow me to take this call from Ruaka. Habari asubuhi.
Mzuri sana.
Yes, kwa majina unaitwa nani?
My name is Ruth.
Okay. Tuambie uko na swali au maoni?
Niko swali kwa
tafadhali paza sauti tukupate. Ni kama network pahali uko kidogo inapotea.
Niko na kwa panel.
Okay. Uliza.
Yes. Beuchi.
Naam.
Good morning, Beuchi.
Good morning.
You are saying that your sister is free for 6 years.
Yes.
True. Did she stop taking the medicine?
Okay. Good question. I don't know if that's the result of the question or he has another question to answer. He's asking whether now that my sister has been seizure-free and whether she has stopped the medication. And the answer is no. She's still on medication. But what is happening is the doctor has, over time, reduced, the dosage of this medication. Yeah. So gradually, the dosage has been reduced, and we hope soon maybe she will be completely off medication.
Right.
Yes. And this is just to also tell people out there, when you go seek medication for these kind of conditions, the seizures might, completely stop, but you shouldn't also stop on the medication until maybe you have been advised by the doctor. Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. I hope umejibiwa. Call us live 0795045864, and probably if you have any questions, you have the right plans for this conversation. Utapata your question ikijibiwa. In case you have any feedback, tutaichukua vizuri sana. So back to you on the whole relationship between caregiver and the zone.
Yes. So that time I was at 2 o'clock in the night is when now the seizures started coming in. And it was chaotic. The person I think who realized was my brother. So they broke into my room and they had to take me to hospital. And you can imagine in my weight, and it's raining. So it was one of the lowest points of my life. So after that day, I decided I should also, because people are helping me, I should also help them to make this easy. I'm saying this because also some people with epilepsy also, you find that they take advantage of their situation by either starting to drink alcohol, starting to drink bang, and this of course affects.
Then were they random, Ama? Did it reach a point where you knew, if I do this, I might have seizures? If labda niko kwa jua nje, labda seizures zinaweza kuja. If I probably, probably at around noon, ndio itakuja. Were they predictable? Were they led to something that you probably would do?
First of all, there's something called the do's. The triggers of epilepsy. The first trigger is lights. They are flickering lights. The second trigger is when you don't eat. When you don't eat food. The other trigger is when you don't take medication, is where you'll get your seizures. The other seizure is maybe when you are taking drugs or other things. So the things, and the last one is maybe stress. So the thing that made mine come maybe is sometimes I just say I will not take the medicines. I'll not take the medicines. As Fred said, you are not supposed to wake up and just say, I'm not taking the medicine. It's a doctor who is supposed to advise you not to take the medicine, or he'll reduce pole until the day he says, now you are seizure free. So at first, the first like 1 year, it used to come maybe after a month. It comes, then it goes. It comes, then it goes. It comes, then it goes. But before it comes, there's something called an aura. It's a warning. Sometimes it hits the stomach. You hear something like it's not right. So you'll definitely know that. Predicts that a seizure will come maybe in the next 1 hour or in the next 1 day. Something is not right. Yes, because it will warn you. It's just like a flashlight.
So what do you do when you have probably that warning? Do you, for example, you wanted to travel, and I will call you wanted to drive, along somewhere, just have a whole, quiet drive and all, and then you have that trigger. Do you postpone some of the plans that you had and say, wacha nikae kwa nyumba in case it happens? What happens then?
For now, when it comes, I can control it because I know. And when you go to the doctor, he will tell you, your body very well. You have to listen to it. You have to listen to your body and adapt to it. But the biggest problem is whereby you have an aura and you've not listened to your body. There was a time, I think in 2017, before we started the organization, the aura came. It warned me twice that something is about to happen, and I assumed it. So when I assumed it, I found myself on the ground and my hand had broken, so they had to put a plate on my hand. I stayed in hospital for 2 weeks. So when the aura comes, you need to relax. I think first of all you need just to relax. But if you are used to it and you are used to control it, as long as you are in a safe place, you have to leave what you do and maybe sit down. But maybe if you are driving, you have to. First of all, you are not supposed to drive and you are having epilepsy. So you need.
Okay.
Yes.
So at this point,
you can kill a lot of people. Yes.
Okay. I actually can see you. Even as you come in on this, even for someone with epilepsy, they're watching you, and they really want to understand some of this auras, because again, as you're telling us, you shouldn't be driving.
Yes.
But someone would say, "Na here economy, I'd really have to do some things. Ikikuja, fine, it will maybe trigger me, and then maybe I'll probably caution myself." So what happens in some of these situations?
Actually, now that's where now you as a person living with epilepsy, now you have to consider, because now you know it's not only your life. You have some people, other people around you. Let's say when you say now you're driving, you get the auras now and you go ahead and drive. God forbid, but in case if anything happens, an accident can happen. You may cause now harm to more people than you. So it's usually advisable when you get the auras, like you say, now the driving, swimming, there are some things that you just avoid. So if you get it and some people usually feels, if you get it like you've been living with epilepsy, you usually know when it's about to happen. Some people might not know, but sometimes they feel, they get the aura. So now that's when now you avoid doing some. If it's a must for you to go or drive, just take an Uber or just use some other means where there's someone around who can help you whenever.
So this means at no point should this person be alone?
Yes, it's usually not advisable for them to be alone. You can just notify someone and tell them, I feel like I might. Or you just take an Uber, be around someone or where you can just get help. Yes.
Okay. So even for you, okay.
I wanted to say, I also think also for people with epilepsy, our biggest challenge also is you have to turn 360 degrees. So if, like you say, I was a pastry chef.
Yeah.
Yeah. So while in Iraq, I told my Kenyan boss, hey, I'm not feeling well. So my boss understood my problem. So I was not in the fire. So I was just making the dough and maybe doing other small things.
Yeah.
So our biggest problem is like, this is your career, maybe you're a mason, you know, you'll not do masonry again.
Yeah.
Because you can imagine you're up there doing your work, then the Caesar comes. So you'll have to like turn 360 to start again.
And at no point did you ever, since 2011, did you ever live alone?
No, my mom was, until I got married, I have now 2 kids.
Okay.
My mom never allowed me to stay alone. Because after he saw my Dubai saga, he knew this is drama. So he always said, hey, rather you stay here, I watch you. Until, and also, as Fred was saying, if a caregiver is good to, if a caregiver is good to you, the community will respect you. Like you see how Fred's family, the mom, the dad, were seeing their sister, how Fred himself took himself from Mombasa to here. Yeah. Even the family, even the community, now the people around, they will respect that young girl. But if like my mom wasn't there for me, if my brothers weren't there for me, there was no way that my wife could respect.
True. And support.
And support.
Though, I mean, Beuchi,
yes.
Epilepsy has been there since prehistoric times.
Yeah.
Since, you know, back then in the ages. But then right now still we'd be talking about stigma, and you mentioning it, because really in a village that doesn't really understand and have the awareness of this, wataona huyo mtu mmoja and they say, witchcraft, you know, demonic possessions.
Yeah.
It's been so many, 4,000 years plus. Why are we still talking about stigma? And how can we really now change that, you know?
Well, you know, the reason why we are still talking about it is, I think people are missing a way of really prioritizing such like conditions. Epilepsy is in a group of non-communicable diseases, together with cancer, diabetes, and we say non-communicable because if I have epilepsy, I cannot pass it to you, okay? And then it is also being regarded as a disability because it incapacitates you to, you know, do your normal thing when you get a seizure or a convulsion. So given that it's a non-communicable and still it's a disability, you would expect that even the government, when they are like coming up with budgets for awareness for cancer or for diabetes, I mean, we need not to be told that it's Cancer International Day or Diabetes Day, but for epilepsy, I mean, thanks to this opportunity, but before we got here, you know, some of us had to really find time and push and call people and tell them there is this condition, we need to talk about it. So I think there has been a bigger percentage of ignorance. As you say, it has been there since time, but people have not come out to really talk about it. The other thing is you have even prominent people who live with epilepsy, but now because of their status, they can't come out and say, I have epilepsy. Thanks to Kiserem, when he was open enough to tell it to the partner, because I believe he did that because he wanted help. Otherwise, there are so many other people who have epilepsy. They get opportunities to go for job interviews, and that's the last thing they would say, because they know immediately they say, I have epilepsy,
might really disqualify.
They get disqualified. And an employer disqualifies this person knowing very well they really need that opportunity for them to earn so that they can buy medicine. If somebody adheres to medication, these seizures can be controlled and they can lead a normal life and they can support themselves.
Now let's talk about those medicines. Ashley, you told us that you have people living with epilepsy on sort of on a daily basis for you. So in public hospitals right now, what's the situation of anticonvulsants?
Okay. In public hospitals, okay, I mean, I'm in a private section. But now it's a bit difficult because some of the public hospitals, you cannot find that medicine. You will go see the neurologist, and maybe sometimes they prescribe for you a medicine, you'll be sent to buy outside. Because
to
the
private
medicine,
hospital.
no, to maybe outside the pharmacies or wherever you can get it. And the medicines they're expensive, quite expensive.
How much are they? Roughly?
Roughly, okay. Like some patient can be using like a month. You can find someone using the medicines for like, let's say 3 months. Okay. There's a patient that I know uses at around 20K per month or a month and a half just to buy the anticonvulsants. So the drugs are quite expensive.
Do you think if we have our own, because most of these are manufactured out of the country and are brought into the country. So that would really factor in matters even the pricing.
Yeah.
And I'm now curious even from all of you, and I'll start with you. Do you think if we had local producers and local manufacturers who produce some of these drugs that really, really need, will that really help? And this, so the reason I'm asking this is because according to the Cabinet Secretary of Health, and she said, and I quote, so this was last year in Parliament, so the long-term plan is to promote local manufacturing of health products and technologies and prioritize preferential procurement of locally manufactured medicines and medical commodities, end of quote. I'll start with you. Do you think that should be the silver bullet, yenye tunatafuta ile, if we have some local, about let's even 10 of them, distributed in different parts of the country, will that really help?
Yeah, I think if the government really lowers the taxes of making these medicines and also helps them in the research, it will be very, very cheap for us buying because these drugs are very, very expensive. They are not cheap. Yes.
Freddie?
Yeah, I totally support. I mean, my sister, for example, uses some medicine, which I think a tablet we buy at 125 shillings. And if she takes that like 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening, and then you multiply that.
That's one tablet?
Yeah.
125?
Yes.
And how many are they?
So she takes like 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening. And that is just one type of medication. And then she has another type which she also takes in the same frequency. So it is actually a challenge. And there are so many people who give up along the way. Like you tell them there is help, but then they think of start medication and then cutting it along the way. It makes the situation or the condition to be even worse than it is. But we also have medicine which is not very expensive. We have medicine that can control seizures, and they are being sold as less as 5 shillings, you know, and most of the time they would be used as, you know, they are the first line drugs that you can talk about when it comes to seizures, and they are available in our hospitals. What we are trying to push for right now, because I happen to sit at the National Epilepsy Coordination Committee board, and we are trying to say if the government then, even what can be bought with very cheaply, if it can be given for free. Let's start with the children, for example, and leave the adults to buy, but let's start with the children, because we have significant number of children, as Asha has said, that are suffering from this kind of condition.
Okay.
And, yeah.
So now, so that you can really understand this,
yes,
and this whole medicines, and because as you say, someone might really see the whole even cost, and I want and again, I mean, they really might be willing, but again, matters financially, it might not really be consistent. So Asha, paint us this picture. So let's say, use the example of Birch's sister. So the family knows that she has epilepsy when she's 2 years old. So it takes all these years. Right now, she's about 16, 17. But then now, for the past 6 years, she's been seizure-free. So at what point will she be okay without the seizures? And does it come to a point where she'll not really even need the medicine?
Yes. For most of the, like let's say 75%, with using the medication the way it's supposed to, with time, they stop, the convulsion stops, but then you don't have to stop the medicine at that particular time. So there are tests which are being done. When you do that test, there is one, we call it EEG. That's what mostly we use to know if the seizures are still there or not. So they'll continue the medicine until the time that we'll do that test and find that it's clear.
With consistent taking of this medicine,
yes.
How long should it take? He tells us that for the sister took about 6 years. Now for the past 6 years, really, she has been seizure-free. So how long, naturally, should it be the consistent use of drugs, but then no seizures? How long should it be?
That usually depends how the patient recovers. Each patient recovers differently. Someone can even take it for 2 years and it clears. It usually depends. You can't say that it will take like this duration. It usually depends.
So now,
the type of seizure and the patient's recovery. Each patient recovers differently.
All right. So now, after the whole seizure-free, what kind of tests, what are you looking at so that you actually ascertain that, well, you can now stay away from these drugs?
Okay, like now the EEG that I'm talking about, it usually checks for the electrical activity of the brain. When the electrical activity is quite high, so now that's when they get the seizures. So the anticonvulsants are usually helps to stabilize the electrical activity, and in the process, now that's when it clears. Once it's normal, now the electrical activity of the brain is normal, and you can see the EEG turns out normal. Now that's when the doctor gradually starts reducing the doses until now we stop. We don't just stop it once. We go step by step. Yes.
For Ikusaram, since now 2011, maybe how long have you been seizure-free?
4 years.
4 years. Are there? Do you frequently go for some tests? And maybe what does the doctor say?
The last EEG I had was like 3 months ago, and it turned out very, very positive.
Okay.
Yes, so I'm really glad. Taking medicines and following the doctor's procedures is very important.
So this is basically hope that maybe some years to come,
yes,
you might not need the whole drugs.
Yes.
Right. Let's get into a whole conversation that still really resonates on matters awareness. And right now, the government is really pushing for community health promoters to really push for awareness into those villages zile uko ndani siasha mahoho uko ndani kabisa, where probably so ndio ufike hapo from the town center hadi ndani, you'd really take some hours, a whole hour. It's a very bad roads there. And now the fact that we have quite a number of community health promoters, I'm really curious from the three of you, if you feel like what they really need to do, because the government says they have been trained on what epilepsy awareness. I'll start with you. What should they need to do? Do you think that they might actually really help in matters of awareness?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, community health promoters play a very key role. I've just mentioned that I have had an opportunity to be serving the National Epilepsy Coordination Committee, and it has an elaborate campaign they call Angaza Kifafa, which basically is training these community health promoters, training the healthcare workers, and doing what they call now roadshow caravan. And we have trained so far close to about 10,000 community health promoters, because every year we target like 4 counties, and we started way back in 2014, 2015. And they have been very significant because these CHPs have been allocated households. So they
Do they also go to schools briefly because of time?
Because of time, yeah, sure. Yeah, they also go to schools. And most importantly, they are attached to households. Okay. So they will know if a member of a family has epilepsy, okay, and encourage them to go to the hospital.
Right. Your final thoughts before I get to this?
Awareness is still key, and as caregivers, what I would urge my fellow caregivers is if you have a person with epilepsy, please take them to the hospital, because medication is there and they can receive help. I am a spiritual leader, a reverend, and okay, the question of prayer also sometimes comes up. Currently, I work with a mission hospital. It's called the Maua Methodist Hospital. And we don't discourage prayers, but also, you know, information is power. So if you know there is a person who has epilepsy and you know there is treatment in hospitals, please take them there. Fantastic. As we pray for them now to get healed.
Right.
Yeah.
Asha, even as you chime in on the whole role of community health promoters, your final thoughts?
Okay, my final thoughts is I'd urge for more trainings to be done for people to be able to spread and maybe train the communities on how to handle such cases, which will help in people will not be in so much maybe hidden, because you can get to the areas where people are being, even the patients are being hidden, and it's really affecting the treatment process for that particular person. So, okay, I'll say maybe if you feel you're lost, just seek for, like us, I can use maybe where I am.
Oh, yes, yeah.
We Ubuntu Neurology, we have a team of neurologists and neurophysiologists, okay, where we really help. If you feel you're lost, you can just find a way, or you just call and seek.
Is there a specific number you'd like to give us?
Yeah, there's an office number. It's the number is 0729 131 318. Right. Sorry, 161 318.
You can rephrase it again so that
0729 161 318. Yeah, right, that's our office number. Right. If you feel you're lost, you can just contact us and we'll guide and help you through.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Yeah, I think as Fred said, CHPs play a very crucial role in between the doctors and the village. And we work with NECC, National Epilepsy Coordination Committee, and we really emphasize on training these CHPs. And my last thoughts I will just say, for a person living with epilepsy, to continue taking the medicines. Please don't fail to take your medicines. Always, even if you're praying and going to church, always continue taking the medicines. And for the caregiver, continue to love that person. Don't give up on them, and always make sure that they are taking their medicines on time.
You're also an activist right now?
Yes.
All right, fantastic. Name of the organization?
It's called Kiserem Epilepsy Foundation.
Kiserem Epilepsy. Epilepsy, okay.
Foundation.
A mouthful on Epilepsy Foundation.
And I also represent Foundation for People with Epilepsy.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Fred Kiserem, a person living with epilepsy as well as an activist. And so you're the founder?
Yes, I'm the founder.
Founder, CEO,
yes,
of it. Asante sana.
Yes, Asante.
Asha Sabit Abdallah, neurophysiologist. They're quite mouthful one there.
Yeah. And
Frederick Beuchi, caregiver, as well as an activist, as well as a reverend.
Yes.
Asante sana. And asante sana back at home for being with us for this conversation. We wrap it here. Back on our digital platforms at TV47, www.tv47digital. It continues there. In case you really wanted to talk to us on our socials, or rather actually call in live, usijali, unaweza endelea tu kutupigia simu, lakini now we change into a whole other conversation.